What's up? Is my microphone good? Working on a new computer, and hopefully volume is good. Hopefully microphone is good. Hopefully camera is good. Seems to be a lot brighter than the other computer I was using, so that's a good sign. Haven't done this since probably maybe 5 weeks ago, whatever. When I was in Birmingham, I was in a hotel room the last time we did one, so a lot of new things going on. Got started the new job, which has been really, really good. Really good setting. So the new job's been pretty good. A pretty good setting for me. Different world going from public school to private school, but it's been refreshing. A little bit different world going from obviously 24 years straight as a head coach and now going and being an assistant coach. But I think it's going to be refreshing for my career, certainly. Looking forward to helping a program without having to deal with all the problems. Looking forward to being able to, do all the things that I think an assistant should do. Obviously, as a head coach for 24 years, I've had, various assistant coaches, and you know how hard it is to find them. You know how hard it is to keep them. But at the end of the day, the bottom line is when you become an assistant coach after being a head coach, you should be able to understand all of the things that the head coach is looking for. So when you, want to be a quality assistant coach as a head coach, you've kind of looked for all these different qualities in assistant coaches. So now when you become an assistant coach, you should be able to replicate those qualities and understand exactly what it is an assistant should do, exactly what the head coach needs. But it's been good not to be in charge of everything. I know a lot of people probably thought after 24 years of doing it, calling both sides of the ball, that maybe I wouldn't be able to do it, but it's actually been a very refreshing change so far. Obviously, I'm only 3 weeks into it and 3 weeks of an off season. We're not in spring ball yet. 7-on-7 stuff is coming up, so it'll be good to get on the field. But, just the whole experience in general, not having to worry about every problem, every stress, every dilemma that comes across the desk is your issue. And so it's been refreshing. One of the things I wanted to go ahead and talk about tonight a little bit was how we were going to look at, when you start on a new job, you've got to you got to evaluate talent. You've got to look at the roster. You've got to watch film from previous years. You've got to see the kids that are on the roster. Then you've also got to get familiar with the staff that's there. You've got to build trust with the staff that's there and the assistant coaches that are there. And, you come in and you're asked to do a certain job, but at the same time, you don't want to come in and make it appear like everything they've done in the past couple of years. Last year, they won 7 games. So you can't come in to a program that's won 7 games and went to the playoffs and make it appear that, you want to make all these wholesale changes because, then it seems like what they were doing wasn't working when they won 7 games and went to the playoffs. So, it's an interesting balance between trying to earn the respect of kids and players and staff members and, trying to get a feel for everybody and personalities and how they respond and communication. And what's up? Hope you're doing all right, buddy. And, just trying to get a feel for who the staff is, who the assistant coaches are. I know the head coach very well. I've coached against him numerous times. He spoke at my clinic when I had my clinic in the first one 2 years ago, and we're going to crank that up again probably next January, hopefully when everything is at some point back to normal. So it was a situation where I knew the head coach. I've coached against him before. He spoke at my clinic. Very, very smart guy, great offensive mind. So it's a good fit for me. It's going to be an interesting situation, but I'm liking it so far. So one of the things I wanted to talk about tonight was how we're kind of analyzing data and trying to figure out, some field position deals and then some first down deals to try and figure out how we want to pressure and how often we want to pressure and what kind of pressures we want to use when we do pressure. They're a program that hasn't played a ton of man-to-man. They've been a lot of zone schemes, a lot of soft coverages. It's been very good to them. They've been a 3-3 stack team for, the majority of the time that they've been good. They've got some players that play both ways. So, sometimes movement has been very good to them. Being able to, move in and out of some different looks with the 3-3 stack has been very good to them. So, one of the things that the head coach brought me in for was to try and clean up the back end, coverages, run support, how the safeties play, but then also kind of interchange some ideas and things that I've done between 3-3 stack, 4-2-5, 3-4, defenses, and some of the things we've done with the 3 high stuff that we did last year. And now, we've done, they've seen us do it to them before. So, kind of interested in it because it makes it tough on the quarterback when he's teaching the quarterback. Obviously the head coach is more of an offensive guy. So, he calls the offensive stuff and he deals with the quarterback. So, for him, when he's dealing with the quarterbacks, the 3 high stuff has been something that has given them a little bit of trouble because of, the alignment of the defense basically makes it tough for the quarterback to understand whether it's middle of the field open or middle of the field closed. So I think we're gonna approach it from a 3-3 standpoint, but maybe play some more tight front, light box theories. I think we're gonna kind of investigate the 3 high stuff at that program and see if we have the players to do it. I feel like there are a few kids there that could certainly be the 3rd high safety in the middle or the middle safety, whatever you want to call them. But one of the first things we're doing is we're analyzing the games that they lost last year and the teams that they might possibly have to beat in district play to try and figure out a better way to approach attacking those offenses and game planning versus those offenses. I think it's always easy, especially when you win 7 games. I think it's real easy to look at the wins and look at the things you did in the wins. But to me, as a head coach and philosophically for me, it's always been about analyzing losses, figuring out what you did in the games that you lost, figuring out what you did against those teams, figuring out the talent differential, and then figuring out how to come up with a game plan to kind of make things a little bit more even, so to speak. So we've been looking at, I've been investigating first downs, been trying to look at how successful they are on first down when they hold teams to under 3 yards. Can they get off the field when they've held teams to under 3 yards on first down? I think first down is, to me, first down is the money down. I think that's where a lot of your game planning should go. Canceling the C gap, Paul, is always going to be the biggest issue when you're playing the tight front. So depending on coverages you're playing, every once in a while, you're going to have to bring a guy off the edge to cancel C gaps. The middle safety is going to have to be a guy that's got to be a really good football player in the 3 high defense to cancel C gaps out. What you're going to do against tight ends and maybe some unbalanced fronts is always a big question. But we predominantly, at least in this area that I'm in, we see mostly 10 personnel and then 11/20 personnel predominantly. So I've always philosophically thought that you have to defend the things that you see most often, and then your scheme's got to be good enough to win the other games against some of the exotics or some of the things that might be a little bit different. But if you're going to see a certain structure 70 to 80% of the season, well, to me, it makes it's logical and it makes 100% perfect sense to have a system that can defend the things that you're going to see the most. So I think tight front, 3 high safety defense is very good versus 11 personnel, 20 personnel, 10 personnel. I think we're at a school where space can be a little bit of an issue for our players. So, when you play the tight front, you're kind of eliminating some inside gaps and you're taking a little bit of the initiative off of the overhangs to have a gap to play, and a coverage to play. So you can, especially to the side of the back, when you're dealing with RPO teams, you can get guys to play a little bit slower out there because you've taken away interior gaps. Canceling the C gap in the tight front is always going to be an issue. there's teams that are going to shade the front and start to play with a 4-eye, a shade, and a 5, or a 4-eye, a head up nose, and a 5. But to me, when you do that, you're right back into defending bubbles again. And if you play with a 4-eye, a shade, and a 5, you now have an A gap bubble, and then you have a big B gap bubble. So you've got a big bubble and a little bubble, very similar to an over front or an even front. So when you go to the tight front, one of the things as a base structure that's unique about it is it has no bubbles in theory. There really are no bubbles. Obviously, it changes the leverage. It presents some different problems for the offense to have to block. You're going to make teams game plan and do things a little bit differently because it's not your standard even front. They're always going to have to figure out where the fourth guy's coming from and odd front stuff. So, the tight front stuff to me as a base, is a very simple way to start. You're eliminating inside gaps. You're really trying to deny vertical entry to the best of your ability without having to constantly work so much on spilling the ball with 5 techniques. You're kind of spilling the ball by your alignment. But your middle safety is going to have to be a guy. If you were a 3-4 team, then your 2 overhangs would have to be really, really good players. The 2 linebackers in the box, if you were a 3-4 team, have to be able to run and play over the top. They really should only have to play A gap to C gap, but the run should be a little bit simpler to defend if you can deny vertical entry. But I like it because it eliminates some of the space in the game that we see today with a lot of 2 removed, a lot of 3-by-1, a lot of 2-by-2, a lot of 11 personnel stuff. So obviously it's always going to be interesting what you do to tight ends. That's going to be the number one question when you watch the college guys do it. They're going to play multiple fronts. They're not just going to sit in tight front. They're going to play tight. They're going to play it shaded where they put the 4-eye to the back and a 5 to the other side. And but in a high school setting, I think the first thing we always have to look at is the simplicity of what we're doing, how we're teaching our run fits in a base structure, and getting good at how we handle situations in a base structure, and then building off of that. And pressure is one of those things that you build off of it. So in an odd front, it's always going to be where the fourth's coming from. But the uniqueness of sending 5, especially from a 3-high structure with all the rotations that you can have with the middle safety and 3 safeties back there. The ability to play man-to-man, I think, with 3 safeties on the field is always something that's intrigued me since, I played with 3 safeties on the field. I've only played 3-high one season, but I played with 3 safeties on the field for probably the last 12 or 14 seasons. And the ability to play man-to-man with 5 secondary players, the ability to match up with 5 skilled players, the ability to take some pressure off of linebackers having to play man-to-man in certain scenarios. Obviously, they're still going to have to be able to play a little bit of man-to-man here and there, but the ability to have 5 skills that can match up on 5 skills is very intriguing, and I like that. I like that part of the 3 safety defense. Again, the 3-high safety defense. I like the fact that you can confuse quarterbacks. It can look like middle of the field closed and turn into split field, middle of the field open real quickly. You can make the decisions a little bit tougher on quarterbacks and offensive coordinators. But what we're trying to kind of look at is analyzing first down, what we do on first down. And, my philosophy was against some of those teams that are really good that they've had trouble with, we might want to be a little bit more aggressive on first down and get those guys off schedule, get them behind the sticks a little bit, and maybe get them to do some of the things that we want them to do, instead of living in that world where maybe they can continue to play their style and be comfortable with, the formations and the plays that they're calling because they're always in manageable down and distances. So, that's one of the first things to look at is if you need to be a little bit more aggressive on first down, if you're trying to create tackles for loss. 5 and 6 man pressures are going to be a very good way to create tackles for loss. I know a lot of people, when they think about pressure, they're always thinking about rushing the quarterback, but the reality of the situation in high school is it's usually in most areas going to be 70% run, if not more than that. So you've got to defend runs. And a lot of times when we're looking at pressures, we're looking at pressures that are gap sound. We're not really worried so much about where the center is going to turn. We're not worried so much about simulating and coming up with all these fancy creepers that are, it's great football. It's great to study. It's awesome to look at, but a lot of those things are, deals where in college, you've got to win on third down. If you get teams to third down, you've got to have a great third down plan. in college, it's almost like first and second down is a defense of its own, and third down is becomes another animal, because it's so important for those guys on third down, and they can predict what they're going to see a little bit more. If they can get teams in 3rd and 3 or longer, probably going to get a lot of passing situations. So now they can attack protections and simulate some pressures and send 4, but still get pressure on the quarterback and drop more guys in coverage. We're looking more at pressures that are going to create tackles for losses, pressures that are going to be gap sound, things that are going to screw up some run game philosophies, whether it be zone or gap schemes. No, I actually got fired, Kyle. So I wasn't really, now that I look back at it, maybe I was a little bit burned out as head coach and kind of doing the same thing over and over again. Gotten a little bit of a routine of what we did and maybe, needed a fresh start. But, when you get fired, you need to find a job. And at this point, there were no head jobs that I really, really wanted. There were none in my area that were going to be open. And of the other ones that were open in the surrounding area, there was nothing that I was really interested in. An opportunity came up to go to a school with a coach that I'm good friends with. And, not only being an assistant coach, but going from public to private and coaching at a private school for the first time and teaching at a private school for the first time. And, in 24 years or 25 years of doing this is kind of a completely new experience. So, a lot of different things went into making a decision, but, I don't know if I'm done as a head coach. I don't know if this is, if that was my last go round as a head coach. I certainly would like to give it another shot somewhere. I would like to maybe finish my career as head coach, but at this point, I'm excited to be an assistant coach. I'm excited to only have to worry about one side of the ball and give my opinion on the other side where needed. But I think it's a good fit for me. It's a good setting, and it's a great place right across the river from the Jaguar Stadium. So really unique setting, unique atmosphere. Excuse me. Just excited about that, and the change is going to be good. It's been great so far, but it's not really a change that I actively pursued. It was something that was needed because I needed a job. So, mug front stuff on third down. Wanted to get through. Yeah, I mean, anytime you're running any mug front stuff, you're obviously, you're trying to mess with the protection. You're trying to figure out which way the center turns. You're trying to get, those one-on-one matchups that you want. Trying to get, your best players. You're trying to get guards to set to mug guys, and you might be dropping them out, or you might be bringing somebody, underneath the mug player to the A gap if the center turns. If you can figure out that the center is going to turn one side or the other, and you mug the opposite B gap, and the guard sets that B gap, and now a 5 technique or another blitzer comes under into the A gap, you're going to make the back have to step up to pick that up. So, I think mug stuff is good. Double mug stuff, if you're, a 3-4 team or a 2 linebacker look, I think that stuff is really good. I think doing it and then dropping guys out can be really effective. But, at the end of the day, it's more about getting into solid situations that down and distance wise you can handle, and then having the ability to handle those. So, one of the things we've been kind of studying, and I've had, the head coaches giving assignments to other defensive coaches, trying to study field position, and trying to figure out what formation gives you the most trouble on the tight. Anything with a tight end is always going to give you issues, because now you've got, the tackle's got leverage on a 4-eye, and now the tight end has leverage on a backer. You might have to bump the backers over. You might have to rotate the coverages a little bit if you want to stay in a tight front. We're kind of looking at right now, if we're going to be tight front as a base, staying in it as much as we can, even to tight end sets. And then if we have to shade it, we'll shade it. But a little bit, I'm a little bit concerned with how much the run fits are going to change if we shade the front. If we can read the same keys and the linebackers can just kind of, play surfaces to where they understand gaps that are open and windows that are open and windows that are closed. Excuse me. I think that'll help. But right now we're kind of approaching it from a tight front theory. Linebackers can kind of be A to C gap players. There really shouldn't be any other interior gaps open. Guys should be able to run. The inside backers should be able to run, especially when we've got 2 of them in there. If there's one backer in there versus 2x2, then he's essentially going to cancel an A gap. You're talking about trips with a tight end on the backside, or trips with a tight end to the front side, or Right now it'd be more coverage adjustments, maybe pushing and pulling linebackers or, Boston or Bowen, whatever you want to call, bumping a backer strong, bumping them weak, depending on where that tight end is. Again, one of the things I mentioned, if he was backside, we would just play our single nub rules. It's split field coverage for us in a 3 high system. So if he was backside, we would play probably the safety down as a sky player, and depending on what we were doing to the trip side, we could probably always have our safety to the backside. The middle safety can handle 3 vertical, so we can play multiple coverages to the 3 open if we want to. And then the backside, we would probably just play a safety down as a D-gap player, and the corner would be the deep half player if the tight end wants to release vertical, and see if we can handle it that way without having to kick the front or do anything different. Again, I mentioned this earlier, but if you weren't here, once you start to kick the front and shade it, now you're getting right back into bubble theories where, if you put a 5 technique, and one of the things we did last year was, if there was a 3-man surface, we bumped to a 5, and then the nose bumped to a shade. Well, as soon as you do that, you've got a big B gap bubble, and then you've got an A gap bubble on the other side. So you're right back into almost even front or under front theories where you now have a B gap bubble and an A gap bubble. And, again, part of the deal with the tight front is trying to get to where you are eliminating vertical entry and you're trying to get runs to go C gap or wider, and you're trying to dictate the runs that you're going to get. One of the things that conversations I had with my head coach, because he's an offensive guy, is, when you attack tight fronts, bare fronts, you have a certain game plan in mind and you have certain runs that you like. So, from an offensive theory, when we think about it on the defensive side, if we know the way teams are going to attack the tight front and we know that we can eliminate either certain schemes or we know where we're going to push the football to, well, then it should make our practices a little bit easier, because now we can defend the things that we know we're going to see. You're going to see tackle pull, whether it's dart schemes or using the tackle in power or, GT counter or things like that. You're going to get a lot of tackle pull schemes. That seems to be the new craze versus tight front. They leave the guard on the 4-eye and they pull the tackle. But if you're going to see those things because of the front you're playing or because of the structure of your defense, then to me, it's like an offensive guy. We used to, guys used to talk all the time or used to ask me about RPOs and when teams start playing man-to-man. And one of the things I would always talk about is if you can get them to play man-to-man because you're running RPOs, you've already dictated the coverage. So as an offensive coach, you've done a big part of your job. Now you've got to work on man beaters. And now you got to understand how to beat man coverage because you're seeing man coverage because they're afraid of RPOs. So, philosophically, it should be the same on defense. If we know that we're a tight front team and we know that teams are going to have a game plan to attack the tight front and, we know the runs that we're going to see, well, then it should make our practice plan a little bit easier. And we have already accomplished part of our goal. We've maybe taken some things out of their repertoire that they don't like against a tight front, and we're forcing their hand to do things that, we are prepared to defend because, when you get into the tight front, you kind of know the schemes that you're going to see. So, that's always an interesting thing with the tight front. If you can get people to add tight ends that aren't comfortable playing with tight ends, then yeah, it creates a little bit of an issue for the tight front. But again, I think you've done half your job. If a team doesn't have a tight end or if they don't like playing with a tight end and you force them to play with a tight end because you are tight front, then to me as a defensive coach, you've done half your job. So, when we were talking about pressure a little bit, one of the things we were looking at is field position and kind of having an understanding for where drives start. What is the percentage of points scored when drives start from certain spots so that you can now start to dictate if you need to pressure and be more aggressive, what types of pressure. So if the team starts with the ball on a 20 and analytics show that they only score points 20% of the time, well, then when they're backed up there, if you're going to pressure at all, it's going to be zone pressures. It's going to be probably 5-man pressures that are relatively safe. What's up, boss? That are relatively safe in theory. And you're probably not going to use, like I said before, on first down, if you need to be a little bit more aggressive against the teams that have been beating you the last couple of years, and you need to create some tackles for losses on first down. Well, if the ball starts on a 20 and analytics show that points are only scored 20% of the time, from previous seasons from the 20-yard line, then I'm not going to be as aggressive on first down, even though, the philosophy against these better teams is to be more aggressive on first down. I also have to use analytics in, my pressure mindset to kind of figure out that if If I'm going to pressure on first down, but percentages show that there's not a ton of points scored from there, well, then it's probably going to be 5-man, not 6-man. Opposite of that, if the ball starts at the 40 and points are scored 40% of the time, well, now I may want to go ahead and 6-man pressure on first down, whether it be, zero stuff or hot stuff or, peel one free stuff. I may want to be more aggressive with my tracks and who I send, because with the ball starting for the 40, analytics show that they've scored 40% of the time anyway. So why not be a little bit more aggressive? And then as the ball starts to progress further down the field, you start to understand when you want to man pressure a little bit more. When you want to get a little bit more exotic with how many you're sending, when you want to gamble a little bit. So, it's very similar to an offensive game plan, and guys figuring out when they want to take shots and, after sudden changes or after explosive plays. And it's the same thing on defense. You're trying to come up with a plan of how aggressive you want to play football and how aggressive you want to be, in your play calling. Obviously, it's all skill related and skill dependent and dependent upon your roster. But when we're talking philosophically and theoretically, which is, in the offseason, a lot of times that's really all you're doing. You're talking about philosophies. You're talking about theories. Obviously, at some point, there has to be application to the philosophy and the theory. And that's the great thing with, it's clinic season now. And Glazer's a lot of people are doing live clinics again, and it's a beautiful thing. As great as YouTube Live and Zoom and all this other stuff is, one of the things that's great about live clinics is the interaction between coaches and the breakout sessions that occur when guys listen to something, get an idea, and then they go in another room or they sit down at the bar and start to talk about what they just heard and how they can use it or tweak it. So, it's great to see live clinics back. But again, this time of year is a lot of theory. It's a lot of philosophy. But at some point, you're going to have to apply it if you coach the game of football. So the application is always going to be the most important. So when you're thinking about the application, you start with a theory, you start with a philosophy first. And then at some point, you're going to have to apply that in a real life setting, right? So when you're thinking about it as a defensive coach, one of the things you want to think about is not just pressure is great. Everybody, especially when you're a 3-3 stack team, everybody wants to talk about how many you can bring and where you can bring them from. But to me, pressure also needs to be game plan. Pressure needs to be, understood of how you're going to bring pressure, where you're going to bring pressure from. So it's just one of those deals where you have to put forth an effort just like an offensive guy does. So if you could run a spread up tempo offense like a Gus Malzahn offense at high school by using bubble routes in the run games, Jack, to be honest with you, I think that's probably what you see the most in high school. I think you see some guys trying to go tempo, throwing a lot of now screens, bubble screens, getting the ball into receivers' hands in ways that they can do it with the quarterback that they have. The interesting thing, Gus Malzahn's a wing T guy. So, it's the tempo at UCF probably slowed down a little bit with Gus Malzahn from the coach they had previously that's now at Tennessee. But, Malzahn's more of a wing T guy. He's more of a gap scheme guy. We've always used, Jack, for me, I've always used bubble screens as a third option. We very rarely ran triple option with a pitch phase. We've almost always had some type of bubble screen or stand up as the third phase in our option game. So we've been doing it for a long, long time and got a lot of the stuff from Noel Mazzone way back in the day. So we've been doing it forever. It's a great option. It's great in high school and it's tough to defend. So King, good to see you, my friend. Play call as a tool to help you. It's more of a tool to help me, King, the way I think personally. It's more of a tool to help me understand how aggressive I want to be. Once I get in the heat of the moment on the field, I'm probably going to call things more from gut. The unique thing about the situation I'm in now is it's going to be the first time that I only have to worry about one side of the ball. So when my unit comes off the field, I can watch a lot of sideline replays like Game Strat. Quick plug for Game Strat. The last 2 or 3 years, I haven't watched a lot of sideline replay stuff because I've been calling one side, if not both sides, and I'm the head coach, so I constantly have to have eyes on the game. So, as an assistant now, just being a defensive coordinator, it's going to be neat to be able to make some adjustments with film, be able to watch film with defensive players and defensive coaches on the sideline. And then, the interesting thing is now that I don't have to worry about what's going on offense. Now I might have more of a chance to look at the analytics and go back and remember, um, the field position things and first down things like that and things that we're going to chart. You know, I think for me, at least personally, one of the things that's refreshing and exciting to me is I think I'm going to get, a chance now to kind of call a better game because I can put more emphasis on what I'm doing. I can analyze what's going on film, and then I can see if I'm sticking to the game plan. If we had a game plan going in, whether it was first down pressures or whatever it was that we were trying to accomplish, I can have guys that are charting stuff, and then in between series, we can look at the charts and see, are we doing the things that we practiced? Are we doing, the things that we worked on? So, it's kind of refreshing in that light. Chase, everything's going pretty good, but basic X and O's of football. Any tips to learn? If you're playing quarterback, there's a lot to learn. You're in charge of the offense. First thing I can tell you is you got to learn how to be a leader. You got to learn how to have some poise. You got to learn how to handle difficult situations. The game does the game gets faster. It gets a little bit more involved when you get to the high school level, but it's still the same game. Guys got to block. You got to make good decisions with the football. As a high school quarterback, one of the things I can tell you is try not to turn the ball over. Try not to make too many great plays. Just do the things that your coach is asking you to do. Do the things that the defense allows you to do. Take the things that the defense allows you to take. If it's in the run game, so be it. If you have to throw the ball, then make sure you're making throws that the defense allows you to make. Don't try and force the ball into tight windows or into situations where you're trying to make a play. And depending on what your future holds and what you want to do, if you want to be a college player, just make plays as a quarterback. You're welcome, King. Just make plays as a quarterback and don't worry about. I found the last couple of years I've had some quarterbacks that have tried to put so much film out there that when we were running some of our RPO stuff, they would pull and throw into looks that they should be giving the ball because they're trying to make highlights on huddle and they're trying to get recruited. So let the game come to you. Let recruiting come to you. And if you're a good enough player, they're going to find you. So I would run the offense the way it's supposed to be ran. I would make reads the way they're supposed to be read. As a quarterback, I would always try to be the hardest working guy out there. I would put in extra time in the film room, in the weight room, and in meetings and other places because other people respect that. And if you're a quarterback and you're cutting corners on your work ethic, your teammates find that out really quick. And it's hard to be a leader when they don't believe in your work ethic and they don't believe in how you're going to lead the team. So just concentrate on being a great teammate. Let the rest of the game just come from there. So, so when you're able to, as an assistant coach or a coordinator, and you're only focusing on one side of the ball, you're able to now kind of analyze the data of the game. You're able to go back and look at the things you analyzed during the week. If you had a mindset going in of what you wanted to do on first down, are you sticking to that mindset or have you got off the script? Maybe one of your assistant coaches can kind of get in your ear and say, hey, coach, we had this plan going in and we're not really following it. And as a head coach and somebody who's calling both sides of the ball, it got tough to do sometimes. And I would get lost sometimes in the flow of the game, and I would forget what we were trying to accomplish, or I would forget, the things that were very good to us or the things that we liked during the week on film. And, I'd get in the ebb and flow of offense and defense and the momentum of the game and the emotion of the game. And so being able to call one side and be an assistant coach and sit back and analyze and watch film, that's exciting because it's a big part of the game and it's something that I haven't been able to do. So, but we're definitely going to, I'm definitely going to use, statistics and analyze data. Well, Jack, to be honest, I've been calling defenses for probably 12 years now. At times I've just called defenses. At times I've called both sides of the ball. So started as a 3-4 guy 20 years ago, 3-4 field defensive team. When the three safety stuff started becoming in vogue, we became a 4-2-5 team, very much like TCU. Then we mixed in some 3-3 stack stuff, staying with all of our 4-2-5 principles, staying with all the same coverages on the back end. Now we're into some 3 high safety stuff, which to me is still our base coverage out of 3 high safeties is still split field. The third high safety is really the Mike linebacker in essence. So coverage-wise, we're not going to change on the back end. I firmly believe in the things we've been doing on the back end for the last 10, 15 years. I believe in playing quarters concepts. I believe in playing middle of the field open, and then I believe in closing the middle of the field with some movements and some pressures and some different coverages, one free and one rat, which is low hole player, high hole player. So I always start as a middle of the field open quarters toolbox team. When we were 4-2-5, that's how we did it. When we were 3-4, we were quarter, half. When we were 3-3 stack, we were split field coverages. So I've always been a split field coverage guy. I'm going to remain a split field coverage guy. And I've always been a quarters toolbox guy, and I'm going to remain a quarters toolbox guy, although I do study some Ripley's match and some cover 3 stuff every year, but I never feel comfortable doing it. So cover 3 is a change up for me. A lot of times when we play cover 3, we're going to drop 8 and only rush 3. I am very adamant at the high school level that you can drop 8, rush 3, and still be a very effective football team. I think the ball, like you were talking about, Jack, with bubble screens and other things, I think the ball comes out of the quarterback's hands in high school a lot quicker than it does in college and certainly the NFL. I think pocket passing in high school is a lost art that a lot of people don't do. It's very hard to protect the quarterback. It's very hard to find a quarterback that can read progressions. You got to have receivers that are, if you're running any choice routes, any vertical choice routes, or, any sophisticated passing game, you got to have receivers that understand that. So a lot of the times you're facing quick game, you're facing bubble screens, now screens, tunnels, or rockets. So I've always, the last couple of years, I've been a very big proponent and very adamant about dropping 8 as much as we can and only sending 3. And then after we send 3, I like to send 5 or 6. I don't send 4 a bunch when we play odd front stuff. I'll mix a 4th guy in here or there. The unique thing about the tight front, the way we play it, is the Mike linebacker can be a game plan guy that we don't count him in our coverages and our split field stuff. It's the other 7 guys playing split field coverages the way we would if we were a 4-down team. The Mike can become an add-on late rusher. The Mike can become a quarterback spy. The Mike can become a low hole rat. The Mike can be a game plan guy depending on how smart he is and how good he is each week, and depending on what you're seeing each week. So that's the uniqueness of being an odd front team and only playing 3-man fronts, or in base defense playing 3-man fronts, because you can drop 8 when you want to drop 8. You can play your normal split field deals and use the Mike as a game plan guy. So I like that part of it. I think it's very unique. So I think dual threats at every level are starting to give guys more options. I think you're seeing more and more dual threats year in and year out, on the successful teams. And even if you look at Georgia, I don't want to say Stetson Bennett was exactly dual threat, but he had the ability to extend plays and get himself out of trouble. I think quarterbacks that are mobile, that can extend plays and get themselves out of trouble, are the way everybody wants to go. The Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Dan Marino, quintessential pocket passer is probably a thing of the past, especially at the high school level. It's becoming a thing of the past at the college level. And, when you start to look at some of the guys that the NFL's got now, there's still the Aaron Rodgers of the world that are awesome. And I would consider Joe Burrow a very good athlete, but more of a pocket passer. Stafford is a pocket guy, but, again, I think the NFL, I don't know if the NFL is ever going to go to multiple dual threat quarterbacks just because of the money involved at the quarterback position. And they've got a lot of money sunk into that. So you can't take as many hits. You can't take the contact at that level that you used to. So I think it's tough for them to play that style of football as an every down base. But even in the NFL, I think you're starting to see the guys that can kind of improvise, the guys that can extend plays, the guys that can keep things going on their own. Those are the guys that are starting to have a lot of success, and the Kyler Murrays and the Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts and all the different guys. Josh Allen has done phenomenal things with Buffalo. They almost at times run single wing ish or wing T-ish type stuff with the quarterback as a runner. So I think the game naturally is gravitating that way. In high school, it has certainly gone that way in the last 15. In the last 15 or 20 years, a lot of times the quarterbacks will get recruited to play wide receiver or DB in college because they were just great athletes in high school. So I'll certainly agree with you there that it gives you more options. Pass coverage glossary, really great book that covers many split field safety. Yeah, any information you can get on middle of the field open pattern matching stuff. It's just you just have to understand if you're a middle of the field open team, or, what are the routes that are going to beat you? What are teams going to do to try and attack? I've always felt like our quarters, principles, split field coverage, middle of the field open versus one back stuff. I feel like we can get more guys tied into the run game. I feel like you can always, when we were 4-2-5 or 3-3 stack, I felt like we always had at least 7 guys ready to play the run in one back scenarios. And, 6 guys were probably fast fitters and one guy might have been a slow fitter. But I always felt like, to me, the issue I have with Ripley's matches, versus 10 personnel 2x2, it seems like a 6-man box. The free safety is more of a post player. He's not really that aggressive alley runner in Ripley's match because of the way the overhangs play their technique on 2 vertical. I've always kind of felt like you'd be a man short on some things, but that's just me philosophically. Obviously, Nick Saban is probably the creator of Ripley's match and the guy that everybody goes to for Ripley's match information. And obviously, he's done a great job on the defensive side of the ball. So, it's obviously sound. It's obviously very good. I just don't understand how to fit certain runs and quarterback runs when you're a 4-2 box with no, immediate help from an overhang somewhere. So that part of it for me has always been a little bit difficult. But, the great thing about it is philosophically you can be who you want to be. If you want to be middle of the field closed, you're going to be middle of the field closed, but you're going to carry middle of the field open coverages as a changeup. If you're going to be middle of the field open, that's going to be your base, and that's what your bread and butter is. But the first thing I always look at is how are we going to close the middle of the field, because if you're middle of the field open, you're not going to live every down in middle of the field open, because you're just going to let a team game plan all the coverage beaters. They're going to run all their palms beaters, they're going to run all their quarters beaters and their pattern match beaters, and if you stay that way the whole night, it's going to be a long night. So and it kind of ties into the philosophy with odd stuff. With the odd front is a little bit more multiple in what you're doing with it. The even front is great. I think the even front is very simple to teach and very simple to play. And obviously there's still a lot of great football teams that play even stuff. But I think, personally, that most offensive coordinators like seeing even. I think they like blocking a 3 tech and a shade. I think they like figuring out they're an option team where the 3 technique is. And when you go to some odd stuff, I just think it makes it a little bit more difficult. So, at the end of the day, anything that makes it more difficult on the coordinator, more or less, obviously we want to affect the quarterback, but a lot of times I think you got to affect the coordinator, because a lot of these tempo teams are check with me and plays are coming from the sideline based on looks. And so if I can affect that guy calling plays on the other side, I feel like I'm doing my job. And I think odd front, 3 high, middle of the field open stuff, and then having your middle of the field closed answers is the way to affect the coordinator. So, reasons I prefer middle of the field open is matching descent. Yeah, I mean, the beauty of split field coverages is being able to play them independent on each side of each other, being able to play the looks you see. Each safety is actually leading 2 separate units. There's somebody on the passing strength side that is going to lead a unit that's probably going to be 4-on-3, and then there's somebody on the weak side that's going to be leading a unit that's 3-on-2. But also how you support runs is a big deal out of it. And I just like supporting runs better from our middle of the field open stuff than I do from, middle of the field closed Ripley's match theory. I also like pressure wise when you're middle of the field open. I like the rotations of the safeties a lot better. I like where, when you're an odd front 2 or 3 high team, I like the fact that not only can you bring different guys, but you can disguise where guys are rolling into coverage. A lot of times if you're a 1 high team and you're bringing pressure from there, it's harder to disguise where they're, where guys are coming from and where guys are rolling to. So when you're middle of the field open, I think it helps with pressure stuff too. So, that's one of the things that we'll be looking at this year is generating tackles for loss and what patterns do we like in the pressure game to generate, tackles for loss? What patterns do we like that we feel gap us out? What patterns do we like that we feel give us a chance versus gap schemes? What patterns do we like versus zone schemes? Who are our best blitzers? Obviously, personnel-wise, that's always going to be a big deal. I think anytime you're playing 3 safety defense, it's an added layer to me to the pressure scheme, because now you've got guys that have the ability to come from almost a third level, if you want to consider it that, even though a lot of times when you're bringing safeties, they'll be second level players when you're bringing them. But, it's just a wider variety of which guys can come, where they can come from. It's a wider variety of what you can do behind that in coverage with the rotations of those guys. So, the big thing for me is going to be looking at, I've watched the Georgia Clinic and Kirby Smart talk about generating tackles for loss. And we use a lot of those philosophies. We use 6-man hot pressures. We try to gap them out up front with all 6 gaps taken, and then the hot guys just being kind of vision and break, fit where needed guys in a run game. We're kind of in the odd front or the tight front. We're kind of looking at the patterns we want to use and how many patterns we want to carry, and how much can we change those patterns with slight tags, wrinkles, without creating all new blitzes. Again, it's not cliche that the name of the game is trying to play fast. And the more things you have in, the tougher it is to play fast. So, one of the things when I took this new job and the coach asked me to kind of evaluate some things, one of the things that I looked at was they had a lot of pressures that had to be checked based on 3-by-1 stuff and who they were sending. And they had to change who the blitzer was and change who coverage guys were. And the uniqueness of the 3 high that I like is the middle safety can really almost, if you're a 3 under 3 deep team and that's, how you like the pressure, the middle safety can almost become predominantly at the middle hook 3 player. And now, regardless of formation you get, you can bring any pressure you want, use the middle safety as a 3 hook player. So now that if you get trips, you don't have to worry about checking the blitz. You can send the same guys. He can drop down to be 3 hook. He's the 3 vertical player in base defense anyway, so it looks the same. So I definitely think with the 3 high stuff, there's a uniqueness to that, where that guy's always in position to be a 3 hook player. I philosophically, for me, when you send 5, I think you need to be able to play 3 under 3 deep. I think you need to be able to play 4 under 2 deep, and I think you need to be able to play man free. If you send 5 and play the same coverages all the time, teams are going to beat you. They're going to figure out a way to beat those coverages. They're going to figure out what down and distances are your pressure downs, and they're going to start figuring out that when you pressure, you're 3 under 3 deep, and they're going to have 3 under 3 deep beaters. So I've always been a firm believer in carrying 3 under 3 deep, 4 under 2 deep, and man free behind our 5-man pressures if you can get them all taught. There's been years where we can't carry them all, and obviously I feel like it hurts us. The school that I'm at now, I feel like we can carry those things. I feel like the staff can handle it and the kids can handle it. So, it's one of those deals where that's something unique I want to bring to the table for the guys now. Is a lot of their pressures last year were 3 under 3 deep. There's a lot of 5-man pressures that were 3 under 3 deep, and I'd like to change that and bring 4 under 2 deep to the table and bring some man free stuff to the table and kind of change how the offense has to attack those pressures. So teams are running those hot coverages when only 5 players in coverage. Can pattern matching rules still be applied? No, I don't know if you can pattern match your hot stuff, because you're always going to lose a guy. You're going to lose that middle hole player, that third dropper. So, if you start matching stuff, I think you're going to be at least a guy short. So the idea with the hot pressure stuff is trying to send 6, make the quarterback get the ball out of his hand, trying to be gap sound in a run game and being really aggressive in how you're attacking the run game and trying to get some tackles for losses. But I don't know if you're sending 6, if you're going to be pattern matching anything, because I think you're just always going to end up a guy short. There's certainly a way when you send 5, depending on formations, where you could pattern match one side and lock the other side, the 2-by-1, 2-back stuff. I think you can still play some pattern match to one side, be 3 on 2 to one side, or possibly even 4 on 3 to one side, and then maybe lock the backside and play some man-to-man. We always had one that we carried in 3-by-1 where we would, from the backside single, we would send, we would send a 5th from the backside, and we would play our normal trips coverage to the front side, and then the 2 guys remaining on the backside, whether it was always corner, will, and weak safety. One of them was going, and the other 2 were playing man-to-man. So we had it where we could send a will, corner and weak safety would play man. We could send a safety, corner and the will would play man. We could send into the boundary. We could send a corner. Safety could roll over the top and play number 1, and the will could play the back out of the backfield. So we always carried that one. 3-by-1's a lot easier to do. We still had the numbers on the front side. Sometimes if they push the back 4 strong, that could be a little bit of an issue. But a lot of times we would dictate it based on where the back was. So if the back was set weak and we knew that he was going to stay too weak, then we would, play our 5-man pressures where we were playing our what we call mix. A lot of people call mini or stubby or we would play man on one, palms on 2 and 3, and have a backer that would relate to the back pushing out, and then on the backside we played man to man, but we were sending 5, so it was kind of a combination, kind of like a split field deal where it's a combination coverage. You're playing your trips pattern match zone coverage on the front side, and you're playing straight man on the backside. So we've done that before, sending 5 also. Sending 6 is a different animal. You're always a guy short in coverage. A couple reasons, Terradome, in high school. Number one, it's very hard to teach. If you're a even front 4-down team and you've got a guy to coach the D line, what are you going to do with those linemen when you need them to drop? Are you going to send them to the linebackers coach? Do you have linemen that have the athletic ability to be droppers? Depending on how you're dropping and what you're doing, what are you asking those guys to do? If you're just spot dropping them, into the boundary, into a hook curl, and they're becoming a guy that's just spot dropping into the boundary, I think you can do it. But, I think to me, it's a sophisticated theory. Now I think you're seeing more mug linebackers that are pulling out. Every once in a while, you'll get the nose, and especially in empty stuff, every once in a while, you might get the nose pop out. If the center turns to him, they might have some mug pressures going on. If the center turns to the nose, he'll pop out and be an extra underneath player. But I think it's the difficulty in teaching it to those guys. It's at the high school level, trying to figure out who's going to teach it, coming up with a practice plan to understand if you have guys dropping, who's going to teach them the drops. Do you have the athletes to be able to do it? So I think there's a lot of reasons, Terradome, in my opinion, why you don't see it as much. Certainly see it more in college and the NFL than you will in high school. But I just think it's a philosophical deal. It's a coaching deal. It's tough to do. Those guys are tough to coach and tough to figure out who's going to coach them when they're dropping. So I think you're better off and you're safer in high school. I philosophically, for me, it's always been let guys that are blitzers blitz, let guys that are coverage guys cover, let guys that are D linemen be D linemen, if that makes sense. So I think that's one of the reasons, in my opinion, why you don't see it as much anymore. But still prominent at the NFL level, still prominent at the college level, just not as big of a deal in the high school level, in my opinion. But good theory on paper, good philosophically to pop guys out and drop D linemen, because obviously quarterbacks don't expect linemen to drop, but tough to do, tough to teach, tough to get accomplished. So I think that's one of the reasons that you don't see it. But again, it's pressure is a game plan deal. Pressure is it's a philosophy. It's understanding field position. When I had young coordinators calling games, I would always get into them a little bit when we got teams backed up and they're sending man pressures. You're always at risk when you're running man pressures for runs that pop. You might not have anybody to get a guy on the ground. You've got eyes that are on men and not, supporting runs. So, as the ball crosses the 50 and the field gets a little bit shorter and odds on the other team scoring points get a little bit higher, then go ahead, pull the trigger and do some man stuff and get a little bit more aggressive in your pressure theory. But when you have teams backed up, if you're going to pressure, be safe. 5-man pressure, zone pressure. If you do send 6, I would suggest, if we had a team backed up and we needed to send 6 and, we wanted to get them off track on first down and we just couldn't stop them in base defense, it would certainly probably be a 6-man hot pressure and 2 under 3 deep, vision and break guys, a guy in the middle of the field to get somebody on the ground if a run pops, or if a pass pops, a guy in the middle of the field to get a guy on the ground, a post player in the middle of the field if the other team's trying to take a shot while they're backed up. That's just philosophically the way I would lean. Now, if you got somebody backed up to the goal line and you feel like you're going to go after a safety or chase a safety, there's been times where I've been a little bit more aggressive in those scenarios, but I still feel like you can get 6-man pressure with hot coverage. You can get zone philosophies. You can get middle of the field closed players. So when I have teams backed up down there, it's going to be safer in theory. And then as they start to matriculate down the field, now we're going to get a little bit more aggressive in theory. But the other thing you got to keep in mind is you got to self-scout and have the ability to change things up. So if you have teams backed up and you're always base defense, they're going to figure that out pretty quick. So every once in a while, you might want to throw in a pressure just as a changeup because your self scout, your self scout says that you never pressure in these, in this situation. So it's always a good idea every week or every so often to self scout, see what you do on first down, see what you do on second and short, second and long, second and medium, see what you like to do on third down, because the other team is analyzing that same data. So the other team is going to be looking at those same things to make their game plan. So as a coach, I think it's always important that you self scout so you can figure out what you like to do and how you like to do it and how often you like to do things. Because I think sometimes as a coordinator, we forget that we become creatures of habit, and we forget that on first down, we like to do certain things, and the other team has charted the same information, so they know what we want to do on first down. So, yeah, James Light does a lot of work on Twitter. I do not know him personally. He does a lot of good work on Twitter, a lot of college analyzing, a lot of stuff where he posts film clips and he kind of breaks it down and analyzes it and does a good job. I know he's been very successful the last couple of years in Michigan. I think the school he's at has either competed for or won the state title. He's in the social media world and in the coaching world. He's a pretty big name. A lot of people know who he is, and I have a lot of respect for what he does on Twitter and what he does in the social media realm. So, and it was actually guys like that and guys that were doing things like that got me to play fast football a little bit different than everybody else. You'll very rarely see me post college clips or NFL clips. You'll very rarely see me post PDFs from playbooks. My niche or my gimmick, whatever you want to call it, is whiteboard discussions, techniques, fundamentals of how we do things and how I think things should be done in high school within certain schemes. There's enough guys out there that do a great job analyzing college and NFL stuff. There's enough guys out there that do a great job, posting PDFs of blitzes that Alabama runs and Clemson runs. I just professionally, I want to go in a different direction because it's hard to compete in that market when there's so many of those guys that are doing it, and it takes time breaking down film and pulling film to put up on Twitter and finding all these PDFs and playbooks and things like that. So, but he's very good at what he does. Yeah, they were probably a good football team, probably really well coached, because he does a really good job with what he does. I also have another buddy of mine that came to my clinic 2 years ago. His name's Rock Marcone. He coaches in the Michigan area somewhere, and his team's had some success the last 2 years. I don't know the name of the high school, but I know he's in the Michigan area, so he's had a lot of success in that area as well. And that's the neat thing with YouTube and the Play Fast Clinic. We had so many guys coming from different areas and parts of the country, and we were able to discuss. That's not always the greatest thing, Terradome. Games aren't won on the whiteboard; they're won in person and live. But the whiteboard is good to kind of put things in perspective and theory, and when you're trying to teach or you're trying to analyze things, and to me, it's still kind of different. There's more and more guys now that are doing it in the last couple of years, and a lot of the guys that are doing it reach out and say, "Hey, I'd like to thank you for having this platform. I've decided to start my own YouTube channel," and that's always that's always encouraging, and it's the reason you do it. If you're a coach, you're in it for players, you're in it for other coaches. You're not in it at our level, you're not in it for the money. So anytime somebody comes and says they started their own YouTube channel or they started to do whiteboard discussions because of something you did, it's always, it's nice to hear. It's humbling, to hear somebody say that from another part of the country, let alone other countries. I've done Zoom talks with guys in Brazil and Germany and Panama, and it's just, it's still humbling to this day. So, but we've been on it for about an hour, guys. If you have any other questions, throw them up there and I'll try and answer a few in the next couple minutes. But I appreciate those of you that came on, those of you that stayed on the whole time. I thought Saturday night would be a decent night since there's no playoff games or no college games. I know the Royal Rumble's going on right now if you're a big wrestling guy. I am a big wrestling guy, but I don't watch as many things on pay-per-view or live anymore. I just kind of follow them on Twitter and see what goes on. But, again, I appreciate you guys for hanging out. our team got to go against De La Salle, went up against the state finals, and the opposing team had a linebacker go. Yeah, it's nice when you get a chance to see those guys. We see a lot of D1 kids every year down here in Florida, so it's always nice to. Oh, I appreciate it, Terry. No problem. I'm sure at some point or another you probably increased my football IQ. Also, I always try and tell people I learn something every time I do a YouTube live, or every time I do a whiteboard session, or every time. Somebody asks a question, it makes me think about what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. And, even if it's a different opinion, you got to understand, in the YouTube world and the social media world, that people are going to view your stuff and they're going to have opinions, and you can't get mad if they disagree. I always try to keep everything I do opinionated, to where, I let people know this is what I think, this is what I do. I've never sold a system to anybody. Defensively, like I said earlier, I started as a 3-4 field team, more of a underfront reduction guy, evolved to a 4-2-5, went to a 3-3 stack. Now we're more broken, 3-3 broken stack, tight front, 3 high. So I've never really sold a system to anybody. I've never believed in, there's only one way to do things. I think this game is so unique. I think the X's and O's are so unique, and I think the coaching part of it is so unique that there's several ways to skin a cat, and there's a way for everybody out there. And if you believe in something, that's great. But, don't chastise or put somebody down because they don't run what you run. Or, I always get a kick out of these guys that post GIFs or memes on Twitter about flexbone or wing T or fullback offenses. And, if that's what you believe in, that's great. And more power to you. I think there's a million ways to score points. I think there's a million ways to get first downs. And it doesn't have to be your way or my way. I think there's a million ways to get off the field. I think there's a million ways to sack the quarterback, and it doesn't have to be your way or my way. So, I think if we had more people that kind of appreciated other people's opinions in the game of football, and were less confrontational, and, less into the cult aspect of what they do. And, I think we'd have better football discussions, and that's why clinics are great. And that's why live clinics are great. You can get so many different guys from different mindsets, different ages, different parts of the country, and different philosophies, and you can get together and hash some things out. And the guys that have the ability to learn and do those things are usually the guys that'll have success. The guys that kind of go in with a mindset and only go to certain speakers that only speak on the things that they want to do. I think sometimes you're missing out on some great info. Offensive guys that never listen to defensive guys, I think you're missing out. Defensive guys that never listen to offensive guys, I think you're missing out. But at the end of the day, it's still social media, YouTube. It's still a great platform. It's still a great way. It's still a great way to learn and grow. And for me, it's a great way to interact with people that I never would have, people like yourselves that I never would have came across in my life. I never would have had these conversations with. So, get back in, Michael. It's a great profession. I think there's still some hope in the coaching profession. I know sometimes I've been negative about it with winning and losing becoming so prominent now. But, every time I've got kicked around, I land on my feet, and there's a lot of great people out there. And, there's still a lot of good people fighting a good fight out there in high school football. So get back in at any level, Michael. Help kids out. If it's a game that you love, get back to the game that you love. So, yeah, I agree with you, King. I've always thought that the ends were more box players, but I see Ripley as match guys that spill. To me, it's always been a mystery, but I've never really studied it enough to know. So I'm going to stick with split field, middle of the field open, split field coverage, and quarters concepts. But I appreciate all you guys. Thanks for being here tonight. Thanks for taking time out of your day to listen to some of the things that I have to say. Thanks for the great questions. Thanks for the great interactions. Like I said, it might be a year away, but we're definitely going to kick the Play Fast Clinic up again. Hopefully next January, because of the setting, being here in Florida, being oceanfront, having some guys being able to get out of weather that they're in. I had a couple of my buddies on Long Island text me today with some football questions because they were snowed in on Long Island. So everybody gets cabin fever. So even if it's in the 50s or 60s or, whatever it may be, that's better than a lot of parts of the country. So having it at the venue we had it last time is very important to me. Having it at the time we had it in January, maybe early February, is very important to me. having it oceanfront where we had it last time is very important to me. So I've been very patient and very mindful of all those things. And I haven't rushed back to just do anything off the cuff just to do it. So when we get it running again, all you guys are invited. I'd love to see you all there. I'd love to all meet you all face to face. Have a drink or an adult beverage if you're old enough, Jack. I don't think you are, but everybody else, if you're old enough, we can share some stories and share some knowledge and have a good time. So appreciate everything you guys do. If you're watching football tomorrow, hopefully if your team's in it, they win. Hopefully you have success with whoever you root for. Good luck to you in the offseason. We'll start doing more of these, maybe one a week or something like that, depending on the schedule. But I appreciate you guys. The videos are going to start getting ramped up again. I've got a setting now in my classroom and got to be better than Green Bay where I was last week. Go Niners. Yeah, go Niners. I'm okay. I actually want the Rams to win because the Rams have the backup quarterback for the Rams, John Wolford, is a graduate of the place that I'm coaching at now. So I think it would be neat to have a Super Bowl champion at the school that I'm coaching at. Coached against him. Never coached, obviously coached him, but coached against him, played against him. I didn't play against him. We played against him. So good player, went to Wake Forest, had a great career. So I'm excited. If he could get a ring as a Ram, that would be great for our high school. So, but to everybody else, hopefully your team wins. Hopefully your offseason goes great. If you have any questions, you can always email me, sting8740@gmail.com. You can reach me on Twitter, CoachMac8740, or just leave a comment in one of the videos that we got, any of the videos that we got going on. If you want to see a certain video, Alexander, hope everything's well overseas, my friend. If you ever want to see something that I think I can do, I'll do it. If you have a topic that you want to see, just shoot me a message on a YouTube video or shoot me a message on Twitter, and I'll take care of it to the best of my ability. If I don't feel like I can do it justice, I'll just give you an honest answer and say, hey, I don't know enough about it. Maybe I'll research it, but I don't think I can do that justice. But as always, appreciate everything you guys do for me, everything you do for Play Fast. Remember, you won't play well until you play fast, and I will see you all next time. Be safe.